Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Sisto Says. Today, I'm delighted to have Katie Osborn from Via Collects, a way strategy firm. I might be a little bit off, so we're going to have Katie tell us actually what she does and what her role is in projects throughout New York City as well as the rest of the country. So first of all, Katie, thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you.
Very excited to be here. Thank you.
As we start every episode, we talk about how I met you, or I met someone from your firm. But in this particular case, I met you directly. So we belong to a small networking group that we meet every 2 weeks, and we have a great group because everyone is really into it. Everybody shows up, everybody talks. We talk about all different projects that might be going on, and I got to meet you, and we started to talk. And when we talked, we realized that we're on a lot of projects together, and yet we didn't know that at the time. So first of all, tell us a little bit about what Via Collect really does. And Wayfinding. And tell us what that is. A lot of people do know what it is, but a lot of people may not. So the audience is very diverse.
Sure.
So tell us a little bit about your role in the building world.
So Via Collective is a company that I founded 15 years ago. It is a WBE and a DBE. Awesome. And wayfinding strategy is our focus. What that means and is different from design is that we really focus on designing a program that will help people of any ability be able to move through a public space, whether they need a static sign, a digital sign, maybe a customer service agent. They've done pre-planning in advance of their trip online. There might be printed materials or static maps there to show them what's in the neighborhood or what's in the region of the network that they're moving through. So it's all of these different pieces. So wayfinding strategy is really about understanding who the variety of users are that are coming through, what those different needs are, what the diversity of the audience is, and what the goals of the client are in terms of what's the experience that this client wants their visitors to have.
And the key word there is experience.
Absolutely. And I'm very excited to see that people are really understanding how customer experience is not just something on the side, but a valuable aspect of how you design the architectural space, how you design the outdoor space, how you bring people together to enjoy whatever you're building. So, and then the design piece of it is once we understand all of those aspects of the people, is we design the actual graphics and the maps and
everything.
The interactive systems.
It's not just a sign on the wall.
Right. And even we've designed things like the jacket the customer service agents will wear.
Wow.
Or
that's a full deal.
And give them tools so that when someone comes up to ask them, how do I get to this location, they can give them the directions that also connect to the directions that are printed on maps or printed on signs.
Or on the walkway or whatever it might be. On the walkway.
So everything is really connected and the communication is really clear and really efficient.
You know, I said this to you off the air. And it's dear to me, and I've been waiting a long time to talk about it on the podcast, and you're the first guest, so I believe you're going to be the 49th episode of our show, and to me that's a milestone because when I first started this, I never thought I would have got through 3 weeks, and now I've had a lot of great guests, and a long time ago, many years ago, approximately 38 years ago, I told my dad that I wanted to be an expediter and code consultant. And my dad, coming from Italy, worked on a garbage truck, very, very smart man, owned a lot of real estate. Made money and invested it. And he said to me, Sisto, what do you do? You're not going to be an architect. And I said, no, Dad, I am an architect. This is part of it. And I've waited a long time to bring that up in the show because I've never mentioned it before. And I don't think my dad was ever disappointed. But as I continued to grow the business with my partners, he finally understood that I had a role in architecture, which he didn't understand. And you are the absolute perfect person to talk about this topic, that our role at design is consulting, code consulting, zoning consulting, strategic. How do I do this? When do I do it? How do I do it? What's the right time to do this part of that? And your role, like us, is we're such an integral part of the architectural process, and believe it or not, part of that experience for them, right? And you're not an architect.
No, I'm not an architect. My degree is in graphic design.
Exactly.
Yes.
But you play such a huge role in every time a person walks into a museum, or they go to an airport, or they go to a college, or they go to a school, wherever.
Yes.
It's not just what you think you see, but your role is everywhere. So tell us a little bit about that and how you work with architects, with owners, because it's not just an architect, it's a lot of times the end user.
Absolutely. And I think what's so interesting about what you just said is that our contributions to the architectural, like when you think of traditional architecture, our contributions, whether it be the information you're providing to them around various code compliance or strategies, or our contributions around user experience, are helping them formulate what they're building. And so one of the things that I love about, I mean, not only do I love wayfinding, and I love the psychology of it, and I love being in public spaces.
Because it's very interactive with humans.
It's so it's so fascinating. But being a part of these larger teams, wayfinding does not happen in a silo, and your work does not happen in a silo.
No.
And all of our teams have, it may be led by an engineer or led by an architect, but there's like 12 to 15 consultants on any of our projects.
Well, now there's an acoustical consultant.
Yes,
there's an
and
consultant
lighting
for everything.
And everything. And in a lot of ways, what's fascinating is that if we are brought in at the beginning of a project, we can start collaborating with those groups on aspects like lighting, so that certain lighting implies an area where
here.
Or
because it's dim, and then bright, and our human nature is, it's bright there, I probably need to go there.
Absolutely. So what's fascinating is that a lot of people think of wayfinding as just architectural signage, but one of a core piece of what I want to leave in the legacy of Via Collective is that it is really about bringing the collective of people together. What I love most about building a company around wayfinding, and a legacy that I want to leave around wayfinding and with Via Collective, is that we are contributing to the overall environments and highly participatory in these projects for the best experience of the visitors that are coming into this space.
And, part of what we do, right? And Ed Stan was on one of the other podcasts from HLW, and one of the things that's really a word that's being used consistently in everywhere we go, whether we were at SCUP together or we go to other seminars or other roundtables, is experience.
Absolutely.
And I think that, part of that is all of us contribute to that experience, right? Someone will come to us, and Ed was saying about how back in the day, their office loved to design classrooms with a lot of glass. But we couldn't, because the code wanted rated glass. And rated glass was tremendously expensive, and the technology wasn't there. But yet, my role was to have a way to let him achieve that. So that experience could be achieved by the students, by their parents, whatever it was. And yet, even though we're the code consultant, my dad used to say, but you're not an architect. But yet, in reality, we are practicing architecture.
Absolutely.
And your role is to work with the architect so that what their vision of the experience is for that person to walk through that space, you're participating in that.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether it's a sign, a light, an arrow, or something, you're part of that experience. I'm part of that experience. So even though we're not architects, we play a big part in what that experience is about. And to me, I found that to be very intriguing. That I am part of architecture, and even though my dad's not here anymore, I know that we're part of it.
Absolutely.
And you're part of it. And there's more people in our industry that probably
Yeah.
do other things that sometimes we don't even recognize.
Absolutely. All of our contributions lend to this, to the creation of this space that is incredibly successful for people. And yet, at the same time, I say that if I did my job well, nobody knows I did my job.
Right.
Because
That is
people are going to the university for their first day of class and they just want, they are nervous and they need to make a good impression and they don't want to be late and, they don't want to get lost. Or
I remember first
Yeah.
days of college sweating, not knowing where to
Yeah,
go.
right. So there's all these ways that we think about the different user types or visitor types that are coming through these spaces, right? And being able to work with the architects to understand how a more condensed space or a more open space, especially within education, this was a very big theme at the SCUP conference,
Yes.
the Northeast Conference, that they're looking at spaces in a less traditional classroom way. And they're looking at shared spaces for learning and shared spaces for studying and more open spaces.
Shared spaces for faculty.
Yeah. Faculty.
They were using up
Yes.
so much square footage for everyone to have an office. And now
Absolutely.
Ed was just talking about that the other day, and John Puglisi from Fordham about,
Yes.
using a place where they can just go to.
Mm-hmm.
And they have their laptop, they have a space,
Mm-hmm.
and they have one part of the space is for one-on-one, and then the rest of it is just a place for a professor to hang his or her hat for a few moments and sit down and do some work for an hour or two. But they don't need a full-fledged office. So
Yeah.
that makes your job also a student looking around. Well, where am I meeting my professor? How do I
Yes.
get to him? When do I get to him?
Yes.
What does it look like? Which building is he in? So, all of those things. But the one thing that I always, now that I am in tune to signage and waypoints and finding, my way around is it's a lot easier than you really think if you just let your mind slow down.
This is true. We are so.
We're going so
Oh my God, we're
fast.
going so fast, a million miles an hour. Especially as New Yorkers, we're just flying around all the
and
time.
it comes out wherever we are.
Oh my gosh.
So that's one thing that I
Yeah.
learned about your
Yeah.
business.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I find, which is something that I am a big proponent of, is what I call balance. And your business and what you create is a lot about balance. Too much signage is no good. Too little signage is no good. So tell us a little bit about how you take lighting, you take signage, you take different materials to make that experience for a person to get from point A to point B, or go in a hotel and get from here to there.
Yeah.
But find balance. Because to
Yeah.
me, that's something that whenever now I walk through the airport, I go, wow, this is great. There's not a sign every 2 feet, but there's a sign far enough down this big open pavilion that I
Yes.
know I got to get there.
One of the things that I love about wayfinding is that there's a lot of psychology to it.
Yes.
The amount of density of people you have within a space impacts how people feel in that space,
Sure.
which impacts their cognitive
Going
abilities.
to a stadium with a lot of
Yes.
people is way
Yes.
different than going to an airport where there's 4 or 5 people walking, but we're all walking at a certain pace and we're
Yes.
all getting to the same place. But yet you
Yes.
get into this confined area, our experience changes
Right.
quickly.
Well, actually, what's interesting about stadiums is you have just the crowd, right? People
Right.
just follow the crowd, and a lot of times people aren't actually paying attention to
Oh,
where they're going.
I'm one of them.
Right? They're just like, well, everybody's going this way, so I'm going to go this
meanwhile,
way.
I'm on that side.
Yeah, exactly. So there's all kinds of aspects of the way people behave in crowds or behave without crowds that we take into account. One project that was very interesting is we worked on the Penn Station Critical Improvements project, and Skanska was a design build. Skanska was leading it, and SOM was the architect on it. AECOM was the lead engineer.
Yeah, great.
So
all great firms.
it was incredible, and it started pre-pandemic. So we were in it for about 6 months, working on all these models around traffic and design that were all based on existing conditions. Pandemic hit. Nobody knew what was going to happen, right? So
throw a wrench into that.
right, we had no idea like how many people are going to be coming back into Penn Station. What is this going to look like? All these kinds of things. And now, 4 years later, you can see it's not I don't think it's back up to pre-pandemic levels, but it's
pretty close.
It's pretty close. And the thing is when you go in there now, you come down this escalator from 33rd Street and 7th Avenue, and it's like this grand entrance.
Right.
And you're like, wow, this is Penn Station?
Right.
And, you know, they raised the ceilings, which just opening up that space
tremendous.
Changed everything. But then also we purposely put the signs within the people's path of travel. And again, it was like there were certain distances because we knew we had the visible space.
Right.
And we knew that we could.
Because it's higher. It's more
higher.
open. You're not like,
Yes.
and when you're in
And
that
dodging
small space,
people and all
you're
that
dodging
stuff.
people.
Yes.
You're actually
Yes.
tense. So you.
And you got to find your train, and where's the train information, and you know, all these kinds of things.
You know, one of the experiences that I always found incredible was many, many years ago, a friend of mine from Stamford, Connecticut, worked for Amtrak.
Okay.
And he was like a VP of some division. And he said to me, Sisto, come on, I'll take you for a tour.
Okay.
And I met him there. And this was pre-renovation.
Okay.
And I remember how it seemed dark. And then years later, after the renovation, we went back. And when we went back, I was like, this can't be the same space.
Right. Yes.
Just them washing all the limestone and just bringing more light into it.
Yes.
It just made the experience
Yes.
completely different and more comfortable.
Yes.
And when you're comfortable, you can find your way around.
Yes, you feel when you're comfortable, when you feel safe, when
Right.
you feel like, okay, this all feels good to me, you will take more risks. You will wander and discover more. You will maybe even go and like, you know, go shopping a little bit in the area if
And
you're
say,
like,
well, I know I can get back there in
Right.
5 minutes, so I'll be fine.
Exactly.
Right, that comfort level. Like when you're in an
Yes.
airport, you know, okay,
Yes.
well, there's going to be a stand about 4 or 5 gates down. I'll just go
Yes.
there. Whereas when you go somewhere else, you're like, whoa, this
Yeah.
is really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know where I'm going now.
One of the projects that one of the clients we've had for the longest time is Randall's Island Park Alliance.
Yeah.
So
we do a lot of work there.
they're amazing,
Great
right?
people. Governor's Island, same thing.
Incredible spaces, like a park that it just adds so much value to those upper parts of Manhattan and Astoria and the South Bronx.
Yep.
And
Grew up in Astoria.
yes, of course. So we one of the very first things we wanted to do to understand how the users engaged with the park was to understand how well they knew the park. So we did this test we call it mental mapping, where we have a park and we had the park and we had a couple of items on the park, and one of them, and then we asked them a bunch of questions, and one of them was, "Where's the closest bathroom?" Nobody had any idea, and so one of the things that we designed specifically on the map was we have the "You are here," and we have the bathrooms obviously, but then we gave them the circles to show them how far or how many minutes it would take them to walk there.
Right. And so then,
Yes,
and
and
nowadays,
then you feel comfortable.
Then you feel comfortable.
You can get back to your
Exactly.
next baseball inning or your
Right,
whatever.
whatever it might be. And, you know, it was, that's all part of that experience that we
Yes.
talk about.
Yes.
You know, how there needs to be that balance, and if there's too many signs, people get confused.
Yes.
If there's not enough signs, they feel like they don't know where they're going.
Yes.
So, I'm an outdoors person. So for me, my wife always says, well, how do you know where you're going? I says, well, if the sun's out, I know always where I'm going. And she goes, well, what do you mean? She goes, well, we're in Long Island. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's on the North Shore. She goes, well, how do you know that? I go, because the sun's over here. That's the North Shore, right? And she goes, oh, my God, I can't. And now, being married for 38 years, she goes, well, I was driving into the sun. I knew I was going south. I go, well, then you were on
There
your
you
way
go.
home, right? But
Yes.
but most people don't know that. I give you a great example of that is go to Montreal a lot.
Oh.
One of my favorite,
Incredible city.
great city.
Amazing
And
food.
Amazing food. And they have the
Yes.
F1. They have the F1 race there.
Yes.
And the problem is that you can take the subway there.
Yes, that's true. They have a great
Most
system.
people get off the subway. They have no clue where the track is because the subway wasn't designed like the 7 train. Everybody knows goes to Citi Field.
Yes.
They always knew it went to Shea Stadium.
Stadium, no,
right?
Citi
I grew
Field,
up in
yes.
Queens. So
Yes.
if you got on the 7 train, no matter which direction you went, either you went to 42nd Street, went too far in one direction, or you went to Main Street and you went too far in the other direction. But one way or another, you were going to end up there, right?
Yes.
You get out of the subway system from in Montreal, and when you get out, it's not near where the track is because it's where the old Olympic Stadium was.
Oh,
So what
yes.
you would have thought when they did the
Yes.
Olympic Stadium many, many moons ago,
Yes.
there would have been wayfindings to get the people to the crowd.
Yes.
When you get off, not everybody's going to the track. They're
No.
going somewhere else. So you start following people and you're taking
Yes.
all the way around it instead of going to the entrance. So as now, late in my career at 59 years old, I found so much value in wayfinding.
That's so great.
one
I
of the
love
reasons
that.
why
love
I
that.
was so great to have you on the show is not only to say that I was naive towards it, but to tell you that through wayfindings, my experiences have gotten better. So it's been, a delight to have you on already, and we still have a lot more to talk about. So I always ask this question, how did you end up opening a business and finding this to be your calling?
Well,
So that's a good question because you
that is-
already chuckled, so that means it's good.
That's a good question. Of course, like it's a long story. So my chuckle was, how do I condense this? Because
It's okay.
I can.
We have a few minutes.
Yes. So okay. I have a degree in graphic design.
Yep.
I also have a father who is a pilot. So we flew instead of taking road trips.
That is my future son-in-law.
Yes, and
He's always in his plane. He has a twin-engine Cessna,
Okay,
so
nice.
he just jumps around.
Yeah, I grew up cruising through airports. That's what we
And
did.
he was a commercial pilot.
Commercial pilot for Northwest Airlines, which Delta bought probably 15 years ago or so. And my mom's an interior designer. And so there's like this combination of interior aesthetic and navigating large spaces that somehow, with my degree in graphic design and a really deep interest in urban planning, led me to this real niche of wayfinding, which really the
That's a really cool way of putting it.
yeah, and the word itself really only came about in about the 60s. There was a book called The Image of the City that really defined what wayfinding could be by the use of various aspects of the city, including landmarks. So
Right.
when you
Well,
talk about
what Ed said. He said, "Well, if you're in France, you look up and you see the Eiffel Tower, you know
Yes.
where you are, right?
Yes.
Back in the day, not now because they got so many pencil buildings, but back in the day, you would look and say, "Oh, here's the Empire State Building. I know
Yes.
where I am. Here's the Chrysler Building. I
Yes.
know here's Citibank's building."
Yes.
Right? We knew where we were.
Right.
And so, but that's changed.
Yes, it has. And as cities grow, those landmarks change. But every time you go to Grand Central, everybody meets at the clock.
Right.
Because the clock is the meeting point in the
Correct.
center of the space.
Always.
So it's what's I think really fascinating about wayfinding is that way before there was a industry that I started
it.
a business in. People needed to navigate all kinds of places,
Sure.
including open prairies or things like that, and they would look for landmarks or
Landmarks are key. Listen,
yeah,
for
yes.
even for me, I'm a hiker. I love to put my backpack on
Yes.
and go fishing in these little remote things. I remember trees.
Yes,
I remember
absolutely.
I remember a rock.
Yes.
I remember a path.
Yes.
So even through hiking, you experience
Absolutely.
something that your brain will remember to get you out.
Yes.
And I always say the best one is the sun. If you're walking in
Yes.
the sun,
Yes.
you need to walk into the sun on the way back because it's going to flip over you, right?
Yes.
So there's always something. But you're right.
thinking.
Nowadays, you've created a profession out of it.
Yeah. So I got a degree in graphic design, and I started in traditional graphic design. This was really pre-computers. I mean, we didn't have computers actually at my college.
When the first
you
Apple
know.
computer, and I'm
Yeah.
back there at City College back in the 80s.
Yeah.
It just everything was done by hand.
Yeah, everything was done by hand. So I actually really love typography. I love the study of type. So I did logos and brochures and all kinds of things like that for a couple of years. I actually taught typography at a school in St. Paul, Minnesota for a while. And then I had this chance to live in a loft in Soho for 6 months.
So how did you end up? So that's how you got to
That's
Manhattan.
how I got to Manhattan. I
Oh,
literally.
so you came from Minnesota.
I came from Minnesota.
A little chilly in St. Paul.
It is. Yes,
little chilly.
I'm not a fan of the winters there, but it is a lovely, lovely
Beautiful
place to
in
visit in the summer.
And great fishing.
Yes, great fishing. Absolutely.
Great fishing.
A lot of lakes, yes. So when I got to New York, I had one job interview with one company, and they had the air train at JFK project.
Oh, wow.
And so before I actually had that interview, when I landed at JFK, I got into the taxi and I saw these massive pillars down the center of the Van Wyck.
You're like, what is that?
And so I asked the taxi driver, what are they building here?
Gonna make a connection.
He says, they're building some sort of train, as if anybody's going to take a train to the airport.
Right.
And I'm sitting in the back going, well, I would do that. Because
Yeah.
I traveled a ton, you know?
Right.
It's like going to London, you would...
Of course, or Europe. If you were in
yes,
Europe...
you take a train everywhere, and all the airports are connected by trains.
Of course,
yeah.
Richard Branson, he took
Yes.
over the rail, and he had the planes, and then he took the
Yes.
rail. And his big thing, we talked about experience.
Yes.
Richard Branson's whole concept
Yes.
was he would tell his executive, I don't care what you think. We need to know what the person who's using
Yes.
it thinks. And that's how he built his brand. Not to sidetrack a minute, but, he is the epitome of that. He started, he had a little record shop,
Yes.
and people would come in, and the first thing he would ask him was, so did you find what you were looking for?
Yeah.
What can we do better to help you find the albums you were looking for? Would you come back here?
Yes. Yeah.
And he would ask them these questions, and he built an entire empire on this
Yes.
very simple concept.
Yes.
Ask the user.
And now people love his
Surveys.
Right. Taking his planes, the Virgin Airlines is an incredible
but like
experience.
you said, part of your business is part of what I think architecture really is for all different pieces of it. What was your experience like?
Yes.
And your experience, their experiences. Did I find the restroom because I have a 2-year-old child at the Bronx Zoo? Did I find
Right.
Did I find the interactive center for my 5-year-old at the Children's Museum?
Yes.
And for us, did I find the luggage? Did I find this? Did I find that? Did I find the port? Did I find all of those things are about hearing and listening to the user.
Yes.
It's not what I think or what you think sometimes. It's really about because if one person does it and you find 7 or 8 people doing it, you're like, oh boy. My favorite story is with landscape architects is
Yes.
you'll go to a college, always on campus at Pratt or at NYU or whatever,
Yeah.
and they do these beautiful landscape designs, and then you go and they got this beautiful grass, and there's this dirt patch.
Yes. Yes. Because
I call it the dirt patch of architecture.
Yeah.
And then what do? They put the seed down and they put a gate and they steer the human around it instead of going, no, that's where they want to go.
Right.
So why didn't we build a path for them to go that way?
Exactly. That's the easy route. So let's have the humans show us what is the best path for them.
So fast forward, you get on this, you see this air train coming, and everybody says it's never going to work, right?
And it's this first project that I have in New York.
That's
and
amazing.
It was just mind-blowing to me. And I remember my very first weekend, I had to work overtime, and I was working through the weekend, and I remember on Sunday being like, I could work every weekend. And then I had a moment of no, I don't want to do that.
I'm in New York City.
I'm in New York City.
Yeah.
But I was just
blown away by it.
I had finally found the thing that was my thing. It was the combination of the graphics and the information and moving people through a space
and your background,
reading architectural plans, like all these things
right,
come together.
and your mom being an interior designer,
Yes.
your dad being in obviously moving people around
Yes,
the
aviation
world,
and all that.
right?
Yes.
Yeah, so
It was so incredible.
and it's such a great aha moment.
Yes.
You know, my aha moment in this business was through a mentor of mine, so I can relate.
Yes.
You know, that when you have that, and believe it or not, you know, at 59 years old, 3 years ago, I took a different role here at the company. You know, other people are running the day-to-day, and I took on business development. I thought what it really meant. And then I realized that it's all about the power of people.
Absolutely.
And I love it. To
Yeah,
me, I can't
yeah.
wait to go see you guys on Wednesday mornings.
Yeah.
I can't wait for us to interact at SCUP. And we get to see not only the professional side of people, because I got to know Katie as a professional,
Yeah.
but I also got to know Katie as a person.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I love about doing. And for me, to have that energy at 59 is just like I had it when I was 22, when I got out of
fantastic.
college. So, you know, I feel your passion and I see your passion.
Yeah.
Just having you on the set today and talking about it. So I always find that one of the things that we saw at SCUP is this whole new concept, and Ed touched on it on one of the other shows from HLW, about being in a space, visually being able to see the other space that we want to be in.
Yes.
And that is a big thing on campus navigation now, for students to experience that they're here, they have a class there, but they can still see there, and they can still feel that
Yeah.
experience
Yeah.
that student's in, and I'm here.
And there's a sense of ease of connection of how they're going to get there.
Correct.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that, and tell us a little bit about that. It doesn't only pertain, obviously, to education. It pertains to, hey, I'm in Terminal A. I need to get to Terminal B.
Yeah.
You know, there's the tram. I know that's going to take me there.
Yeah.
Or, hey, there's a corridor. It's high, it's low, and then it goes back up. That's probably that.
Right.
Connected.
Yeah. People have a way of, I mean, some people are better at it than others, but people have a way of understanding physical space in their own mind. And so if you can give them enough tools, like some people read flat static maps, other people read three-dimensional maps, other people will be able to see the actual architecture and understand it from that way. And so being able to provide these different items so that people can absorb information in the way that's best for them is what creates the variety of wayfinding tools in a system, right? But
Because they're not all the same.
they're not all the same, and not all the users are all the same. But ultimately, I always say, if someone is truly lost, what they need is another human to confirm that they're going in the right direction.
Or
Yes.
the husband driving and admitting that he's lost. That's my favorite thing about wayfinding.
Yes, that always helps.
That
helps.
always helps.
Yes.
So we missed the part. I'm sorry. We're going to go back a second.
Okay.
So how did you end up starting your own business?
Oh, so starting my own business.
So you get this project. You find this is your passion. This is
Find
what
this
I
is my
love. I
passion.
could work here every day, but I'm in New York City.
So I'm
I'm going
like
to do.
Yes.
I'm going to do this answering process.
Yes.
Project.
So I worked at that company for 4 or 5 years, and then I worked at a few other smaller firms, and then I ended up working with my mentor, and her name is Sylvia Harris, and unfortunately she died very suddenly, just 3 years into working
Sorry
with
to
her.
hear that.
Yeah, and
My mentor died young too.
yeah, it was
It was very sad for me.
it was one of those things where I realized that I had never, I had mentors before, but she was like a different level.
Right.
Her ability to think about wayfinding in this way was something I had never experienced in other projects.
She had just a different way.
She absolutely had a different
she had
way.
she had a gift.
Yeah, and she really opened up the idea of the user at the center of the wayfinding.
Oh wow.
And for me, and so that was unfortunately, after she passed away, I realized, I was like, I could go and get another job, but I would never want another boss. Like
Right.
that just doesn't make sense. And so I decided to carry on and work on the projects I was working on under her firm, but I also had projects under my company
That's great.
at the time, and then it all has
It
come
all merged
together.
together.
It has all come together. And I mean, I am so incredibly grateful. It was an incredibly unfortunate circumstance, but at the same time,
She passed the torch.
she passed the torch,
No
and I am
doubt.
so grateful for
yes.
the work that we do and for the incredible team I have. We've grown a lot in the last year.
How many people are at the firm?
So there are there's a total of about 10,
Nice.
and just over half of that is the actual design team, and then I have the support around finance and marketing and those kinds of things. But they're just an incredible team of people that have really great ideas.
Bob Zirkle, again, did a show, and from E.W. Howell, and Bob and I go way back, and his show was about young people not having a mentor and not wanting a mentor. My mentor passed away also, same thing. He helped me. I met him when I was in elementary school.
Wow.
And I wanted to be an architect, and he was an architect. And I wanted to go to Brooklyn Tech, but my parents wanted me to go to a parochial Catholic school. He convinced my parents to say it's okay for him to get on the train an hour and a half because that's what he wants to do.
Yeah.
And when I was ready to go to college, I told him I wanted to go to Pratt or I wanted to go here. He says, no, you're going to go to City College. And I said, why do I want to go to City College? He goes, because they're all practicing architects in New York City and you'll make your connections for life. And believe it or not, he was so right. I ended up not knowing what expediting was. He sent me to the building department. I got a permit. I said, Joe, this is crazy. You paid me all this money. The guy behind me had 10 of these. He goes, you got it. I said, well, I know what I'm going to do the rest of my life. And that's and he helped me. He got me projects. I mean, he instilled exactly what I needed to convince my other two partners that they wanted to be architects too. And they decided to come in this business. So, there's a lot of similarities to you and I about having a mentor, but also, you didn't really want to be an architect. You didn't want to be an interior designer either.
No.
And you didn't want to be a pilot, but you found a way to be in the architectural world. And same thing with me. So at the end of every episode, Katie, first of all, your story is incredible.
Thank
you. And you've opened my eyes to it. So if there's one, I'm sure there's many thousands that have never told you it, but I'm able to tell you that after meeting you at our little networking group, there's not a space that I go into that I think about what you do and what your team does and how important it is to architecture, and not only to architecture, but to their experience, right? So at the end of every show, or close to the end of every show, a good friend of mine, Andrew Peters from Curry and Brown, who gets quoted on every one of these shows that should be paying me, but he doesn't. So mate, you owe me a beer. He always says that our job is to look forward, not behind, because he's a cost estimator.
Yes.
So at the end of every show, I always ask one question to the guest that talks about, in your realm, in your world of wayfinding, predicting something for the future. What is going to change in wayfinding? And the great part about it is we get to have you back as a guest in a year or two, and we get to ask you if it's been there. So AI is a big part of what you do.
AI
is going to change everything we do.
Is changing
right.
things.
So if it's not AI, what do you think is the game changer that you think is going to evolve over the next several years to getting people from point A to point B? In an architectural space or in an outdoor space, enlightening their experience.
I think that what you see in terms of static signs will become more digital and interactive.
Gotcha.
So it's not just about having a static sign that points you in a direction, but as architecture needs to evolve and move and be flexible, the digital signs help to quickly navigate people into spaces that wouldn't be possible if they have a static sign. Yes, and flexible.
That's the big thing, that you can change it as you need it. Do you think that there's going to be, and I always think of this, that you're in the airport, you get stumped, and there's a place, and it's not an information desk, it's a microphone and a computer with AI who says, I need to get to gate 43. Is that something that, because we do it now. We do it now with a GPS.
Yes. It could be very interesting when you think about that, especially in places where the international population is so high. So an airport where you have almost like a VR experience with another person. I think that the actual human interaction will never ever go away.
Okay.
But I do think that there is opportunity for AI or just digital processing for someone to walk up to a person, ask them the question, and it is a computer that is responding.
You're throwing me back to the days when my father would make me lower the window and in his broken English, he'd say, Ma, you telling me where JFK Airport is? And the guy would go, make a right, make a left, make a right. But now we don't do that because we have a GPS. But yet, in certain spaces and in certain places, a hotel's a perfect example, where you get a little confused. You see someone, you say, hey, can you tell me where the sauna is?
Yeah.
You're not uncomfortable there.
Yes.
But yet, if you roll down your window and ask someone on the street, it's very uncomfortable now.
No.
Because you don't know you don't know if they're going to look at you like, well, what's wrong with you? Don't you have a phone?
Right, don't you have a phone? Or even do they understand you? Or what could it be?
Or typical Midtown Manhattan, right? We're walking down the street. How many times someone will say to me, can you tell me which way the east side is? Because they're not from here. And you're like, okay, just go that way. But for us, it's like that.
It's a split second. So there's a familiarity of place that you need to have to be able to, share an
But I
experience.
think that's part of wayfinding is that using other humans to help you.
Yes, it absolutely is. It absolutely is.
So you still think that it's not really going to change as much as we think? Digitally, yes.
Digitally, absolutely. I think that there is no way that the information management won't be influenced by a digital connection. But I always think that the thing that will never change is people's need to connect with others.
I'm a people person.
Yes.
I think that a lot of people don't give other people enough credit that they interact with them. Big thing for me is post-COVID that, our office has 40 people, and I miss not having all 40 people here.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
I really do. Just to go up and say good morning and ask them how their day is.
It's a very different experience.
I come in, I see one person on my floor because Ivan still loves to come in, 4 days a week. And we get to sit and have a cup of espresso and chat about life, chat about our projects.
Yes.
Now it's, can you make a Zoom call? It's like, going to a doctor's appointment. Like I got to make an appointment with my employees. It's tough.
And it's this human connection that builds the relationships, that moves the business, that connects us to our next big project.
Of course.
That all of these pieces are all connected through relationships.
My wife always says to me, well, what are you going to do when you retire in 4 or 5 years? I said, I'll never retire because I still love people. I'll still go to the Wednesday morning meetings and I'll still go to my Tuesday night meetings. And I'll still, because that's the part I like.
Absolutely.
And if you enjoy that and that's part of your fabric, you just don't lose that. So at the end of the day, Katie, first of all, I want to thank you for taking time out. Everyone who comes on the show has to take a time out of their busy schedule. But I want to say personally, thank you that meeting you has changed my experience in walking through an airport or being at a train station or actually being anywhere. Because I've realized how important it is and what your role is in architecture for people to find their way around, whether they're with an elderly person or a young person or just ourselves alone.
Absolutely.
How,
with a lot of luggage and bags and shopping and whatever, it could be
sometimes our most valuable thing are our children and someday my grandchildren. And I can tell my grandchildren how important it is to be aware of the signage and what it means to do that. And it's part of the experience. So, first of all, we've never done an episode on this, so it's been a true pleasure.
Very exciting. And it's an honor to be on your show. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for coming in.
Thank you so much.